Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Event Sustainability Live, brought to you by Event Industry News and sponsored by Evolution Dome. My name is Zach Goodman. I'm the host of the DRPG stage, and we've got a few more sessions left this afternoon. Before I get into the next session, I just wanted to make you aware of the headsets. Pop those on for optimal audio and the opportunity to change the volume. We've got captions over here on this screen if you want them in a different language. Just download the Interpretify app. And over here, you've got the opportunity to scan the QR code and submit questions, although our panelists are very happy for you to take part in this session. So I'll be walking around with a microphone at any point that you want to stick up your hand and get involved. So I'm going to introduce Josh Taylor, Health and Safety Manager at Event, Supplier and Services Association, who's going to introduce the rest of our panelists. So over to you, Josh.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yes, welcome to our panel. We've named it Mind the Gap. We'll be discussing some of the challenges that the industry and our members have been facing in terms of sustainability measurement, deciding what to measure, how to measure it effectively, and making sure information is relevant and accurate. And equally important is how we communicate that information and how it's perceived to potential clients and the wider industry. So without an agreed upon system, framework or measurement, we run the risk of encountering gaps in knowledge, data collection and reporting standards. These gaps could then potentially lead to inaccurate information, misperceptions, or its worst, greenwashing. So I'm here with David Humphreys from Green Circle Solutions, Lisa Tyson from Aztec, and Keith Swain from MJ's Event Services. If you'd like to introduce yourselves a little bit, that'd be cool.
Okay, I'll go first. Are we alike with the audio? You can hear, okay, yeah? Can you hear now? Okay, good. Good, thank you. David Humphreys, Green Circle Solutions. So my background, I've spent the last 25 years in events and exhibitions, very much on the operational delivery side. Work with a company called GES. I'm sure many of you have heard of GES, but on the corporate account side. So I was fortunate enough to work primarily with aerospace and defence contractors. So I've been to all the major air shows in the world. My carbon footprint is horrendous, but always been passionate about sustainability. But the day job always got in the way. But during lockdown, I used a bit of furlough time and got qualified and became a member of IEMA, the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. Thought I could do something with that and came out of the pandemic as Green Circle Solutions, so offering sustainability and consultancy advice to primarily events and exhibitions related businesses, which is so far so good, going well. And here we are. So.
Hello, my name's Lisa Tyson. I'm Deputy MD of Aztec Event Services. I'm a huge sustainability advocate, but also as an organisation, as a business, we've made sure that we've been on this journey for probably in excess of a decade. I think as a company we've struggled to find frameworks. It's been so great to be able to work with ESSA in terms of the sustainability framework that we have rolled out. But for us it's very much about an ongoing process, an ongoing journey. There's no fixed position. This is a continual journey for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Swain. I'm General Manager for MJ's Event Services. We are floor covering provider, supplier, installer. We also deal with the recyclable side of the business. We are at the sharp end of sustainability. Seen a lot of changes. I've been doing this for 20 years. Probably peak awareness right now in terms of sustainability across events. We fight the fight for floor coverings. We believe there's a lot of misconceptions around, which we are trying to address at this show, and wider. There's a whole lot of education needed, and that is really why I'm here, and to support the guys from ESSA who are being real advocates actually for the contractors in the industry.
Cool. Thanks, guys. So something that I've noticed talking to ESSA members is that the willingness to be more sustainable is there, the passion to be more sustainable is there, but people just don't know where to start. Especially currently there's so many different potential avenues or potential ways to start. It can sometimes feel overwhelming. What do we do? So I thought it'd be good to get an idea of how you guys started and potentially anything that now stands out as being particularly useful, or how can we encourage other people to just start their journey on it? So I guess, I don't know, Lisa, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. we're acutely aware that what we do as an organisation is we encourage people to leave their homes, come to an event. That obviously carries with it carbon footprint, and obviously we're a technology supplier, so again we're using energy which has a carbon footprint. I think for us, we try and work very closely with our clients right from the very, very beginning. For us, it's about a conversation point. I talk to clients about how do you want to make changes, what changes have you already considered, and they will give relevant feedback. Some are more engaged possibly than others, but the majority of, as you say, the appetite absolutely is there. So for us, we're very much about sharing knowledge, trying to help people make better decisions in terms of giving them choices. You know, do you want to work with a single print? Do you want to work with a print that could work for a couple of years for you? Do you want your equipment to arrive via a truck that has HVO, which is obviously biodiesel? You know, giving choices to people. That's very much how kind of we see that whole narrative at the moment. Yeah.
For us, for me and for MJ's, sustainability, people have asked about our sustainability journey. For us, actually, sustainability is baked in to what we do, because if we don't have a recycling outlet and facility for the products that we supply, we cannot supply it. Our biggest challenge in terms of sustainable initiatives is getting the message across that floor coverings are sustainable, and it's actually educating people around the raw material that they are made from, and the fact that there is a closed loop and there is a pathway for our products to actually lead to a sustainable event. The interesting thing on this show, particularly being a no carpet event, is this the industry norm? And the truth is it isn't, which is why we were rewarded in a way by the organisers to actually allow us to actually do a demo gangway of the latest product, to make the point that the emission of a product or service doesn't automatically make an event more sustainable if we have to have the facts to back that up. So everything that we do is measured. We can give detailed reports on the weight of the carpet, the volume of the carpet, and where it has ultimately ended up. And we're actually probably slightly easier for us to do because we actually have a limited product range, and we know exactly what it is. When it's AV or where there's a service element, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But for us, the data is there because actually the resource that we sell, when it comes out of a show, has value to us. So that actually makes it a lot easier as a product. It's not about just chucking it in a bin. It actually has a value in the aftermarket in the plastics industry. So for us, that's always been part of our remit.
Very interesting, David.
Okay, in terms of where do we start and where did I start, I guess I've come at it with two hats on. The olden days, pre-pandemic, when very much involved in operational delivery of stands and stuff. Always, say, passionate about doing initiatives, but like 10 years ago, I would say instigating recycling initiatives ourselves, myself, on sites, recycling carpet, recycling ceiling tiles, but it was very much sort of a self-motivated initiative. And what I've seen since definitely is a trend. I know we're going to talk about it a bit more. The momentum behind some more focused frameworks of sustainability is definitely, that momentum has gathered, and really developing pace. In terms of my new hat on, Green Circle Solutions, working with lots of different businesses right across the whole event sector, people ask, where do we start? Where should we start? Just make a start. You can be easily terrified with going straight to a timeline to net zero. Just making a start. In the olden days, people would have a sustainability policy, maybe, and it would be a one sheet of A4 that gets dug out every 5 years. Even if all you do now is have a sustainability policy, that's fine. I'll do that as a consultant, offering policies to people, but it's got to be something that makes sense, and it actually it's a policy you sign up to. From the very top of the business, they have to acknowledge that this exists and you're going to stand by it. Your health and safety policy, that will be the first thing they read out in court if you have a health and safety issue. Sustainability at the moment is not a legal requirement, but I think whether it's legal or whether it's just a business driving us to those requirements, having something in place and then being proved that you can stand by that, I think is that, the momentum for that is building as well. So make a start. There's more and more frameworks that we're going to talk about in a minute. There's plenty of frameworks and route maps for you to follow. So don't be scared. Don't wait until you're perfect. None of us are, even those that are sort of well on the journey. So make a start, and a policy that you'll stand by is the first place, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Well, something that stands out for me for the starting point, David, he was kind enough to help us with some training days throughout the last year. We've had lots of members come in and we discuss where to start, and a massive point of that is measurement. So wherever you are, whatever you do, I know we've got Keith with the carpet, you still have that measurement process of what do we use, what's recycled, but Lisa with your AV, what do we use, what we recycle. There might be some common areas we have, but in able to understand our impact and then put things in place to reduce it, we've got to measure it. That for me has been the biggest starting point, but again, that comes with questions of what should we be measuring, how do we know, where to start with it? Is there somewhere we can go and find a list of things we can measure? Does that exist? What's your experiences of that? Has there been anything that you found useful, aside from the training days, which I found very useful? Or have you had to sort of be proactive and find that information yourself? I know you've been saying, we've chatted about this.
Yeah, I think I might go first on that one. I think I've made a conscious point of being on the ESSA cross-working groups, and what I found actually is really quite impressive that you're sat on a group with people that potentially you see as potential competitors, but there is a genuine appetite there for people to share knowledge and talk about measurement and how they do it. I think people are desperate for there to be a single point of reference, and one of the things that we were talking about, weren't we, David, is that actually it's interesting, we work in very different sectors, but we actually work to a very similar framework. For us, it's very much about a 3-tier process. So what we actively do for clients is we will give them carbon metrics of what the AV element is for a show. So we'll talk about your usage of your carbon footprint for equipment. We'll talk about the haulage of getting that equipment to your venue, and then we'll talk about the usage of your teams, your technical teams getting to and from site. That's kind of a real challenge to try and obviously observe that information and put it into a collatable state of facts for clients. But we've worked really hard. We work with obviously accredited suppliers as well who can give us that metric. But for us, it's just it's trying to find a singular point of framework that you can have all.
So I know, Keith, we've talked about it, and it seems, even though the companies do different things, there might be more elements and different materials and lots of different things, but from a carpet point of view, it seems you've got that sussed already. It's quite, or you said the measurement side of it.
Yeah, it's easy for you.
It's a bit easier.
It's,
but,
is it? It's not easy, but it is probably simpler than other sectors in the industry. I think what's changing for us now, we can provide a recycling certificate for literally any show that we supply for, because we know what the weight of the carpet is that we have supplied to that event, and we then know what weight has been transported back to the reprocessors for recycling. So everything goes across a weighbridge when it goes for recycling, so we can measure that against the material we have supplied to site. So it's interesting about whether we are marking our own homework, which is what we are trying to avoid. I think the work that Josh and David have done on their sustainability training days and providing the framework for actually measuring your carbon footprint, that for us now is going to be the big change, because we are being asked now about miles in transit, what type of vehicle is being used, how many men, how far have they travelled. So our own measurements of our own work are really good, but we're now being asked on a, like the word I keep using, a bit more granular kind of level to actually justify the way that we work. And that, a good example, we just did CPHI in Barcelona. We were able to actually find a recycler in Barcelona, which an accredited recycler for our material. So that works really well for us and helped us to keep transit costs and mileage costs down in terms of the CO2 emissions and everything else. So it was a really interesting case study for us to try and push for more localised solutions when we are looking at recyclers. Yeah, so it works. Yeah.
Okay, measurement and measuring carbon. Do we need to measure? Yes, we do need to measure. So once you've made a start and you've got your policy in place, the next place I go to with most businesses is to actually do a carbon footprint measurement analysis of the business. That can seem very daunting, and you've already hinted, Josh, there are lots of different ways to approach it. But I see, and clearly, I'll send out questionnaires to people to calculate a carbon footprint, be as transparent as I can about how I've created the footprints. But what I see already, there's different ways of approaching things. There is commonality, more commonality than I think you'll realise. People are accessing the same databases. There's definitely different ways that people are asking for information. I think that there's a pain barrier we've got to get through as we go 1 year, 2 years worth of data. But that will start to rationalise. I'm confident of that. And there are more and more easy-to-use tools becoming available, and I think we'll all get more familiar with it. So, do we need to measure? Yes. And where do you start with a carbon footprint? Well, again, the training days give a sort of a good access to the kind of things we need to look for. But once you've been through the process, it starts to become much easier. And it's all data that you've got. It is down to the travel, it's down to miles, it's down to people, how much fuel you use. It is down to the meters squared and kilograms of materials that you use. It's all things that you've got in your procurement systems. So it just might need to be shaped slightly differently. So unfortunately for the data gathering, there is a pain barrier we've got to get through. But it is, I think, I'm confident from what I can see that is going to rationalise fairly soon, I think, over the next coming year or two.
I think you've covered that really well. So I was going to ask about the consistency element of it. And as organisers and venues, how would you know which suppliers to be using in terms of sustainability performance if they're working from different frameworks and there are inconsistencies on the scopes, perhaps where they're getting their data, how they choose to present that data? How can an organiser or a venue select those? But it seems like you're saying, David, that currently it's all about measuring, and that framework will emerge, or hopefully will emerge sometime in the future. It feels like we're still very much at a learning, as an industry, a learning stage where measure what we can, present it as best as you can, but as long as we can try and be consistent in the long term. So then that's sort of the consistency element that leads into an auditing, an accreditation, certification sort of side of things. So from a health and safety background, that's quite well known. And when I first started looking into the sustainability stuff, I was quite shocked by how many different sort of accreditation certifications there are. I wrote a few down here. I won't go through them because we'll run out of time. But how do you know which ones to use, which ones are credible, which ones are reliable? I've heard of some that are being like self-certifying, so people can have an accreditation or a certificate, but do you have any experience in those? Do you have the ISO's accreditations? Are there any that you'd suggest people look out for, or any good ones, that sort of stuff?
We don't follow any particular accreditation, as in an ISO. We would be quite happy to. And also, we were talking just before this meeting, we also know what our competitors do, but we have really good relations with them. So it's quite odd. So I would be really happy to have a framework that really covers floor coverings, because we're the specialists in that, and then see if that can then feed into the ESSA accreditations and the training to say this is the established sort of data package, if you like, that that part of the industry provides, because there's loads of different, like we said, we count 10 different possible accreditations. Which one is credible, which one actually has the most clout within the industry. But also I think they're great, but I do think the people that deliver the individual elements within the show actually are the people that know what the challenges are and also what the solutions are. So the data set and the responses to any inquiries should come through that and actually build the framework through the specialism. I would literally have no idea with AV. I would trust 100% the information that you give me, because that's not my experience. It goes the other way with us. So I'll talk about carpet all day. What do you want to know? and it's building that framework around that, and consistency, I think, so that we're all talking the same language, so it gives you better choices.
Yeah, I think for me it's about due diligence. Aztec has ISO 14001 sustainability accreditation, and it also has ESSA sustainability accreditation. I think you have to look at your business and you have to make a judgment as to which of those frameworks actually is most suited to your business type. It's really important. There's new ones springing up all the time, but you have to look at what works for you as a business. So it can be quite unique to your sector.
Yeah, and the accreditation issue is a really valid point. And I think to some extent it's a bit like the data gathering. I think there is a pain barrier that we're going to have to go through, but what Lisa just said is absolutely right. You have to do a bit of an assessment, whether it's B Corp or CDI, or whether it's the ESSA module, and it's horses for courses. At the moment, pick the one that is most appropriate for you, for your sector, and that you're going to get the most value out of. So sooner or later, maybe organisers will say you have to be ESSA module accredited, maybe. Or you have to report under the CDI or Science-Based Targets Initiative, whatever it is. But I think, and even though it can seem quite daunting, there's so many particular options at the moment, already there is a greater level of commonality than you realise. B Corp, quite a lot of people that are going for ESSA accreditation are actually independently going for B Corp. And B Corp is a globally recognised standard, sort of like the gold standard of sustainability, and it certainly doesn't focus just on carbon. It's the much wider remit of sustainability, which is great. But it is quite resource heavy in achieving it. Same with the ISOs, globally recognised, and gives you a nice badge that your corporates, your clients recognise. But there's a lot of resource tied up in getting the badge. But scout around. What are other people around you? What your peers doing? Who's getting where are you going to get the value out of it? And the ESSA module is much for the ESSA aligned, ESSA supplier base. It probably is the most appropriate. It's certainly a starting point. It's less resource heavy, and the framework actually is very close to B Corp. So it's sort of B Corp light. So there's a good level of consistency and commonality out there already, I think. Have a look around and pick the accreditation that's most appropriate for you. And where are you going to get the value? Ask your clients. What are your clients demanding of you? There's no point getting B Corp if they want you to be ISO 2012-1. Or are they insisting on the ISOs? So again, have a ask around and talk to your supply chain up and down to your clients and see where they perceive the best value.
Thank you. I think leads in quite nicely now to the communication aspect. So you can get those badges, and David, you mentioned reporting. And as I understand it from some of the training provided, if you're a certain size company, you're required to report in a certain way. But currently, for the vast majority of our members of our industry, that's not a standardised thing, so you don't have to report. So people are communicating their sustainability efforts with potential clients, organisers, but in a way that gives them the freedom to sort of present it any way they like. Do you think we'll end up having that sort of mandatory reporting? Do you think that would be a good thing? We have covered consistency and things like that. Or do you see that freedom as sort of a right to present and market the way that they want? Or do you think we'll end up reporting from the same hymn sheet?
Be interesting to see these guys take on it and what they perceive, but I make no bones about it. Clearly, at the moment, getting your sustainability acts together is a marketing tool, and everybody does marketing. If you are good, your business is a sustainable business, and you're doing good, and you're being proactive, absolutely, you should shout about it. Your clients want to know about it. You should be encouraging your supply chain to follow you in and support you in that. But there is an awful, we know it, there's a big risk of everybody shouting about the latest eco product, and actually there's very little credibility behind it. So reporting and consistency, I think there's that much momentum and behind the different bodies we already talked about, behind sustainability now, that fairly soon people aren't just taking it as read, whatever they hear. They're scratching the surface and saying, okay, prove it. Or can you do as an audit? Or can you provide us a certificate for how much has been recycled? So I think that level of credibility is almost self-policing. You're quite right about the reporting. Currently, only the stock exchange listed companies have to report their carbon emissions. The rest of us are just doing it for fun. So why the government don't just send us all an email and say, in 2 years' time, we're going to want you to start reporting? Imagine what that would unleash in terms of progress. But I think before the government mandate it down to our level, I think the corporates that are required to report, they're starting to filter that down themselves. And we need to feed into their reports. So I think it is coming, carrot and stick, whether it's mandated on us or whether we do it sort of semi-voluntarily. I think the reporting level comes. And again, I think there's a pain barrier of reporting in different ways to different people for a period of time, but I think the consistency will come in the relatively short to medium future of the next few years.
I think for us, we're very much led by our clients. It's great now, and actually it's really, really positive and encouraging to see clients sending RFQs into us, asking us what our sustainability credentials are. And that's a good thing. And question your suppliers, question your supply chain. It's so, so important. Because at that point, you will know whether you are dealing with an authentic supplier or whether, again, to use the terminology greenwashing, are they spending more time on their marketing of their activities versus what they are actually doing to minimise their impact? For us, we're very much fully transparent. We have a sustainability policy that relates to our supply chain, as well as a sustainability policy that relates to our own business type. Yes, we do go to market. Yes, we actively promote the fact that we are ESSA Sustainable Platinum accredited. Yes, we do go to market and say we have ISO. It's really important. There's hours and hours and hours of time that's spent to get those accreditations, but they're done for genuine value. And for us, we are committed to it as being, say, an ongoing process.
Yeah, I think because we are often a subcontractor, our clients, we would actually prefer them to ask the question, because it does make us actually address or review all of our working practices. We've been asked by some clients to provide can you give us a sustainability report for a show, and we say no, we can give you a recycling certificate. That's not the same as a sustainability report, because we can't factor in transport, late orders that require an additional van on the road that is not it's kind of beyond our control. It comes back to the whole scope thing that we can control ourselves and then feed into. We would far rather be asked the question to find out, even if we haven't got the answer. We're more than happy to put our hands up and say we don't know, which is sometimes harder to say, I think, from a professional point of view. But I would rather have that conversation with someone and then feed that back, and then we all improve our own performance. I think that's what it is, and improve our own businesses.
Brilliant. Yeah, David, you had another point?
No, there's one more point on the communication thing and the word you used there, Josh, which is greenwashing. I haven't got to the full bottom of the details of it myself, but there's an EU directive. We can have a separate debate about Brexit if we want later on. But there's an EU directive coming out in the next year or two that is going to seriously ban greenwashing. You will be taken to task if you cannot stand by your claims. To what extent that filters down to us on the show floor, in the events industry in the UK, remains to be seen. But it's out there. So I said earlier on about your clients that are reading your claims are more and more going to scratch the surface and not just take it as read. They will be asking for proof. So if you're making sustainability claims, you need to have some robust background and details behind it.
But that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. I've always been a big believer of communication and just having those conversations and asking the right questions, and even if you don't know the answer, saying you don't know, but working to get there. And I think being proactive in that, I think it's brilliant. And leading into where that will take us in the future. So do you think, I want to ask, what do you think would look like in the next 5, 10, 20 years? And they would have this new directive. We might all end up under one reporting framework, I don't know, but where do you see us heading? Events will still be here, I've got no doubt in that.
I think it would be lovely to have a single framework. I think the chances of that are somewhat remote.
Yeah.
And I think there still will be a bit of a battleground because, as I say, different sectors require different engagement. But it would be lovely to have a single framework, but also a global framework. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about being UK-centric, but actually international, global, holistic,
Yep.
wider understanding. You know, what we're doing here in the UK, is it being mirrored in the continent? Is it being mirrored in America? And that's obviously where there's inconsistencies.
Definitely. Yeah, and as long as we're asking the same questions, I guess. Keith, anything?
Yeah, I think what's improving and will improve is communication. There is currently a little bit of self-protection within each sector of the industry to say that we are, whether it's we are the most sustainable or we are improving sustainability. After this, I'm heading off to a presentation to the Association of Event Organisers. So talking to organisers and venues, and I know ESSA work really hard representing contractors to kind of just drop the walls a little bit between each different sector, so that the communication is better. And I actually see that as, I think that's the way it's going to go, because it's actually in everybody's interest to communicate better and agree a framework and actually present better events. I think that's the way it's going.
David, anything?
I think clearly the event of the future is going to be completely covered in fully sustainable, 100% recycled and recyclable floor covering.
Hope so.
Covered in lots of fantastic digital solutions, bringing in hybrid. We haven't touched on hybrid, but if that's what the pandemic proved, we need face-to-face events. I think we will still be doing face-to-face in 2050. We haven't even touched on travel, and most of us haven't travelled too far today, but lots of the events here, travel is a huge part of the equation. So digital hybrid definitely has got part of it. Does somebody need to come to an exhibition all the way from Africa or India or whatever to present their latest product? Maybe some of that can be done digitally and virtually. So I think there will be a greater integration of digital and technology as we go forward. Same conversation came up in some things yesterday. Other people saw, which I thought was quite interesting, more of a consolidation of events, so bringing together, creating more of a festival type thing. At the end of the day is what an event is. It brings, how many meetings have you guys had today, which would have had to have been separate trips? That's the beauty of an exhibition. You all come together and you do an awful lot of business in one 24-hour period. Maybe extending that and bringing 2 or 3 shows together under one roof over a 2 or 3 day period. Maybe that will be where we go in the future. I do think face-to-face events will continue. But I think we will have to be careful certainly as a supply chain industry, as a whole industry. We've got to do quite a bit to continue to demonstrate that it can be a sustainable option. But as I talk to businesses, look around here now, but it doesn't have to be all modular, boring. There is, I'm not saying this is boring, definitely that's part of our challenge, is to maintain creativity. Because if you come to an exhibition, it's a marketing exercise, so you still want to stand out from the crowd. So as the supply chain, we've got to come up with these sustainable solutions that still create a wow factor.
I think one of the things I always talk about is beauty with purpose. You can absolutely create something lovely, but you can also be very mindful of how it's being recycled, what its onward life is.
I think with that future in mind and that meeting for purpose, I think we've covered a little bit, but is there anything that the people in the audience can do or we can do that you'd suggest we can do to help us get to that future? Like, how can we, whether it's asking the right questions, encouraging certain aspects of sustainability, I'm sure everyone does, but
yeah, I think for me it's about starting your conversation much earlier. We talk about all the time, and it's said so many times, talk quick, talk early, talk with your suppliers earlier, and then you can kind of build your sustainable journey into the actual event itself. That's my one thing, is talk at the earliest stage possible of your planning.
Yeah, for us, sustainability needs to be planned. There's a conversation that we're talking about the layout of shows. If it's if a layout is like a grid layout, as opposed to having a lot of dog legs on a floor plan, you can save an awful lot of waste on offcuts. We don't like to talk about waste; it's a resource, but it's more efficient. And so this is one of the, again, we talk about barriers with communication, but talking to event organisers, we've had some really interesting conversations. Going back to what David said about, will live events still happen? We've had conversations the last 2 days that we would not have had if we weren't here. The people have actually come up and spoken to us. it is a tactile product that we have. So seeing samples and talking to us about what's actually on the floor is really important. But then actually getting the message across that if it's planned as well, then there are savings that can be made everywhere. We're not looking to sell more, we're looking to sell better in some sense. That, you know, because it keeps costs down and keeps the events alive as well.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Communication, collaboration. Again, this came up in discussions yesterday, but I think asking the questions, you said, Keith, you'd rather people ask the questions, and I think wherever we sit in the supply chain, we should be more open and honestly asking the questions of our clients, whoever that may be, to you know, challenge them. But I think we need more partnerships as well. I think we've got to go away from the transactional type of exchanges and contracts. You know, in and out, build and burn, single use. You'll get the reuse, you'll get the efficiency from greater understanding, greater collaboration. That comes from partnerships. And I think certainly from our ESSA point of view in the supply chain, I think we should be more bullish about creating partnerships with our clients. You know, if this is transactional, if you're not going to give me a contract to go to the second or third reuse of this, then, you know, maybe you're not quite in the luxury position of turning your clients down yet, but I think you've got to be pushing those conversations quite hard to develop partnerships with people, move away from transactional kind of business.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. In terms of what questions to ask, from a personal point of view, I've always felt, you know, I'm not the expert. Keith, you know infinitely more about carpet than I do. Same Lisa, AV. So my question initially could just be as simple as how can we be more sustainable, which then opens the conversation, and, you know, I'll take your advice. You're the experts, you know what you're doing, and we can make it work if we can make it work. So I've got it that we've got 7 minutes left. I was going to see if anyone had any questions from the crowd or anything for the panel.
We do indeed.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we've had some sent into Slido, so I'll kick off with some of those whilst the people on the floor can think of any more. How do you weigh up sustainability with accessibility? Example, having no carpets is awful for anyone who is hard of hearing because of the echoes, or some neurodivergent people.
Oh, I had that conversation yesterday with, and it was a conversation that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't been here. One of our selling points, if you like, on carpet is that it improves the environment, but 100% improves the acoustics, and that for people with hearing loss, hearing impairment, or anything that's a barrier, or, you know, that kind of almost like the white noise that I can even hear now. We know that on shows where there are a lot of theatres, carpet does help to dampen the sound, and it stops this kind of sound bouncing around. So that was actually, we talk about marketing, you know, and sustainability and marketing in it, so that, and we do use it, but actually we were kind of like, that's actually also an interesting added benefit that we don't kind of add to the value of our own product, but we are now. But again, live event, we wouldn't have had that conversation without the introduction from the guys at Event Cycle. Yeah, so it's a valid point. Yeah.
Thank you. A lot of talk around sustainability policies. What should be included in a sustainability policy? Obviously, that's a big old document. But in summary, what should we be putting into a sustainability policy?
A genuine commitment to actually follow it through. You know, my starting point for lots of businesses is, can I see what you've got so far? And so much of it is, you know, we will recycle more paper, we will endeavour to reduce our mileages, but there's no tangible commitment to that. So you're signing up to a commitment to whatever you say you're going to do, and then this is where the measurement comes in, year on year. You've got to demonstrate some kind of progress. So to do that, you've got to measure it, you've got to set some targets for reduction, whether that's carbon reduction or whether it's just mileage reduction or energy consumption reduction. So the policy needs to be a genuine commitment. So whoever signs it, even though they probably won't go to court yet, unlike if it's a health and safety policy, but they've got to be prepared to stand by it. And if that's obviously the MD should sign the sustainability policy, that means committing some resource to sustainability. And this is where the whole investment discussion comes in, but every company I've worked with, for a small amount of investment, is small, very soon you start to get the benefits back.
Thank you. Have you or can you provide sustainability support to charities who might not have the funds or resources to create something? Example, a partnership or a sponsorship. Is that something that any of you have explored, or is it something you could?
Yes, is the answer, I guess. But yeah, again, there's whole bigger, wider discussions about circularity, circular economy, much more regenerative economies and businesses. We're all having all the conversations on the show floor today, all the stands talking about sustainability, but we're still framing that against the current economy, the current GDP model, growth, financial growth. And if we truly are going to get to some kind of progress in 2050, net zero, there does have to be a reshaping, and that includes regenerative, much more supportive businesses. So better mechanisms for getting the carpet or the food into the various charities that need it. So there is a mindset change that is needed, but that's where most of the companies are making good progress. They've got partnerships with charities. So charity doesn't have to be for free. It can be and should be built into some of these processes. It's something every business can look at it at all sorts of different levels.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any free tools or resources available to support organisations that are collating data with measuring carbon impacts? Any that you can recommend?
Yes, there are. I've got tools, Green Circle Solutions Office tools. They're not for free. They're more focused, they're more aimed at business reporting, etc. But there are carbon calculation tools out there, and there are other sort of web-based tools that people can access. There's more tools than you realise, I think, at least to make a start. We said at the very beginning, make a start. Investment can be fairly minimal. If you have no idea what your carbon footprint of your business is, there are tools out there you can go on, worldwide, WWF, worldwide for nature, what is it? World Wildlife Fund, there you go. WWF got a very good calculator. There's various free food emissions calculators. Calculate your own house carbon footprint. There are definitely free tools out there. Just Google free carbon calculators.
Thank you. I think Isla as well have Trace, which they're just based over there if you wanted to talk to those after as well. What is your view on large UK venues claiming carbon neutrality? Should offsetting be allowed in these calculations?
Carbon offsetting. There's another whole discussion.
I know, but it gets a bad rap, doesn't it? Carbon offsetting. But right now, what else are you going to do? I think that's the reality, isn't it?
For me, there definitely is a mindset or a feeling within the wider sustainability sort of arena that we shouldn't be offsetting. We should be absolutely focusing on getting to net zero by making reductions. Net zero, generally taken as getting from your baseline, whatever it was last year, this year, now, down to about 10% of that by 2050. That's a huge, huge challenge. And lots of the ways we'll get to there are outside of our remit. And it does come back to the fossil fuels fundamentally. Getting all the way is going to be a huge challenge.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 1 minute left, so have we got any more questions from the floor? Yeah.
The session is called Mind the Gap. I just wondered if there were any sort of glaring gaps that people miss or don't consider. Is it as simple as that in terms of the gaps when they're measuring and they're embarking on their sustainability journey?
I think at the moment it's just getting on the ladder, actually. Encouraging people to really consciously make an effort. I mean, obviously ESSA, it's so easy. We've talked about the tiering system, didn't we? So I don't know if you want to have that open conversation now.
So we want to encourage everyone to start. We've got that a tiered system of tier 1 up to 5, where a tier 5 company has been measuring their carbon footprint for years. They have things in place to reduce it. They're looking at all different elements. But the gap between that and someone just starting, it might seem big, but we want them to go on that journey and just start and close that gap and get everyone up there.
It's about
Just don't be
advancement,
scared,
isn't it?
let's just
Every
try.
year, as a business, you can move up from tier 1 to tier 3 quite quickly, actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a huge amount of energy to get to that point. But the mind, for me, it's just about please make that initial effort. Please try and get onto that framework, whatever it is that works for you and your business type.
If there's a gap for me, you said please make a start, please make a start. And it's a real chicken and egg, carrot and stick. For me, the gap is that we're such a serious issue we're in, potentially. In 2050, who knows where we'll be at. But the climate change emergency is so huge, the gap is that we're not mandated to do this yet. We're all doing it for fun. Lots of us are doing it just for a marketing ploy. But we do need to be mandated to do it. Now, whether that comes from the corporates or whether it comes from the a legal mandate, then remains to be seen. But that, for me, is the gap, is the mandating of really driving sustainability forward.
Oh, I think that's time up for us. So thank you very much, Keith, Lisa, David.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Cheers.